just testing to see how this will work. It's been quite a while since I've done a podcast. I had been really, really busy from going to Washington, D.C. for a week for training for social studies teachers to going to Williamsburg, Virginia. So I am really glad for those that have taken the time to listen to the various podcasts of the different topics. So a friend of mine suggested that I just start recording while I'm out and about. So today I am out and about and trying to take care of a few things. Not necessarily anything that I need to do, but a few things that I want to do. But I will say that since our last discussion, if you will, I've thought a lot about this particular topic in regards to ADHD, and it's been boundaries. So I guess in some ways I have been working on boundaries with myself, and it has been really different learning to adjust to not only trying to respect other people's boundaries, but above all, learning to be better with establishing boundaries. It's something that I, in times past, had difficulty with, learning to, as people say, speak my truth, or things that work for me, rather. That would probably be a better way of saying it. One of those boundaries is like learning to actually verbalize, okay, this works for me, this does not, and if you cannot comply with this boundary, then I can't just follow through. So that has been an eye-opener. I actually started reading a book, reading and listening to a book, because for me, it's better if I listen to it and then get the book, whether that be find the PDF version of the book and then annotate, because if I annotate, that helps me. And one of the greatest things that I learned from the book so far is learning to understand what is my responsibility and what is not. That really has been a true game changer for me, because in times past, I would want to be responsible for how other people feel. Now, I have also accepted that I can influence what other people think or what they feel, but ultimately, the choice is up to them, just like the choice is to me on how they feel. Someone can influence, and they can have an influence and kind of make me feel sad, or not make me feel sad, have an influence on my emotion, whether that be good or bad. However, if I have that much control, or if someone has that much control over me, then I should be able to, if it's me influencing them, if I can make someone mad, then I should be able to tell them, okay, now be happy. So that understanding has been groundbreaking for me, because I understand even more that as a person with boundaries, I have control over my emotions. In times past, I'll be honest, I allowed others' influence to impact me to the point to where I felt like I had to respond how they wanted me to respond. Now, it's not saying that I don't have emotions. I do. By all means, I do. Things move me to tears. Things move me to laughter. Like, even I've learned to laugh at myself or laugh with myself, and that's okay. And even that for me is a boundary of learning to accept who I am. That I do indeed think differently than others, and that's okay. So much so that when I first got my book, Boundaries, actually, I have the tendency to tell a story, and my children sometimes say I have a story for everything. I have a lot. Not for everything, but live long. If I live longer, I pray to. I have a story for other situations. But I was in the Goodwill, and I came across this book called Boundaries, and I started reading it, and then because it works better for me, I found the Audible version of the book and I began to listen to it. And one of the most interesting things in the book was that it starts off with a excuse me, a parent going in and meeting with the child's like teacher or principal because the child was having difficulty. And the principal basically tells the parent, I agree with your son because the son said, I don't have any problems. And the teacher began to say, you're right. He doesn't have any problems. You have all the problems. In other words, the parent was taking ownership and responsibility for the choices the child or the student was making. And then the principal or the teacher says, would you like for me to show you how to give him problems? In other words, for you to give the problem back. And that has been an extreme game changer. Even though I've not shared with you on my thoughts in quite some time, that alone has changed my life for the better, because I have accepted that because someone responds the way they do after I say whatever I need to say or whatever I need to reestablish or establish, that is not my responsibility ultimately on how they respond. Because I am resolved that people respond based on their thinking, or they react based on how they're interacting with the world around them. And I have no control over what goes on internally. I can influence, but ultimately that is the choice of the person on whether they decide to forgive you or whether or not they decide to be happy about something. And that's been extremely helpful, because sometimes I've done things and I expected a certain response, and that was not the response that was given, and I then would own whatever it was. But I am so grateful for a better understanding of what is my responsibility and what is not my responsibility. And that's a boundary that I'm so grateful that at 42 I'm now learning to appreciate and even implement. Out of the two books that I'm listening to that one, and then I'm also listening to Atomic Habits. I think what has been not only groundbreaking, monumental, a game changer is so far boundaries, but I can tell that because it's uncomfortable, that's why I've not listened to that one as much or as frequently, because learning to establish boundaries after not having boundaries, not only is it uncomfortable for other people that have to get used to the new you, it's kind of also uncomfortable and a new space for me as well as the person learning to establish those boundaries. Even boundaries, like something that I'm learning even for myself, is learning to even establish boundaries for myself and things that I am not responsible for. Or things that I can't necessarily change about me. And learning to tell myself, one of the boundaries that I have established is if I start to feel sad, or I start to feel self-defeated, to understand that I've set a boundary that I cannot go down the rabbit hole of negativity. Hyper-focus. Here's something that I'll share why I say that. As a person with ADHD, we have the ability, yes, we can get sidetracked, but with the same amount of energy, if not more, with getting distracted, we can hyper-focus. And if I am not careful, when something that I would prefer not to happen happens, I can then begin to ruminate, if you will, or constantly focus on, rehearse in my head what happened and how I'm a horrible person, I'm dumb, or I'm stupid, or irresponsible, or whatever the case may be. All right, so one of those boundaries that I have established for myself is, Greer, mistakes happen. but don't ruminate. Don't focus on that. Don't allow that to be your meditation. And meditation is not you just sitting in a room and you hum. Meditation is actually what you verbalize. You verbalize, you speak it. And sometimes our thoughts, we begin to speak them out, or we just begin to just say it in our heads. All right, so as I said before, I've been really, really busy this past summer, and summer went by super quick. But here's what happened a few weeks ago. I was in Washington, D.C. It was a really great trip. I got to experience things that I hadn't ever experienced, got to go to different museums. It was really inspirational. I mean, just being with the other social studies teachers. But here's what happened in regards to a boundary that I established for myself. And I'm so grateful and thankful for understanding that even for myself, I have to put a fence in some places and tell myself, you can't go there. Do not, what's they call trespass, no trespassing, do not enter. That's what I have to tell myself in regards to the rabbit hole of negativity and the boundaries for myself. All right. So one of the things with ADHD is we have the tendency, well, I do, and I think some other people agree, we have the tendency, if we aren't present and focusing on the task specifically, we'll forget things. Like, for instance, when I park my van, I try to, now that I'm aware, be mindful of, okay, am I on row A, row B, row C, row D? Because if I don't pause and purposely look, I will park my van, and then when I leave the place, I'm like, where did I park? Like, literally, that happened at the Galt House. I don't think I was sharing. I don't know if I did a podcast and shared that when I was at the Galt House this past, maybe I did, I don't know. You may remember, but that's okay. I said we don't remember, but nevertheless, I was at the Galt House and I had parked my van and I was just trying to hurry to get back because it was lunch. And I parked my van and I thought I remembered what it was, but I did not. So I spent like an hour looking literally for my van. So we forget. All right. So long story short, I've been trying to be more mindful, more cognizant, more aware of what I'm doing in the moment and not just go into autopilot, because if I do that, I will not remember where it is. All right. So we're in Washington, D.C. See, I came back and I took my medication today. Yes, I remembered. Took it later than what I anticipated, but nevertheless, I did it. 2 thumbs up. Okay, so I was in Washington, D.C., and my goal was, Greer, you're going to do better with being at the bus on time, because every day the bus would leave and we would leave at a certain time. So some days I did better than other days with being on time. And sometimes when I stay in a hotel, I have the tendency or the habit to get an autopilot and I will forget where I put my key, the hotel key, to get into the room. Well, I had done really well all week with keeping up my key. I would put it in my backpack or I would put it in my wallet, but I was aware of where I put it. Well, this particular day we got back to the hotel around about, I don't know, it was maybe like 10 o'clock because it was really late days after going to the different museums. Then we would go get something to eat and we would get back to the hotel. And this may have been like the 3rd or 4th day of the trip. Okay, so we're in Washington, D.C., a big city. I don't live in a big city. The city that I live in, it's got maybe 55,000 people, so it's a little smaller environment. So we're in D.C., and I'm trying to make sure that I'm aware of my surroundings and keep up with my hotel key when I'm out and about, because I want to be responsible. Well, I did what I thought I should do, and I should look for my key. Now, the easier solution for this problem would have been, okay, you can't find the key immediately, just go downstairs and get another key. Well, several months ago when I stayed at a hotel, the rule there was if you lose a hotel key, they could charge you. So I didn't want to necessarily be charged because I lost a hotel key. All right, it's just plastic, but nevertheless, I wanted to be responsible. Well, I'm looking in my wallet and I don't see the hotel key. And I look in my backpack and I don't see the hotel key. So I did what I thought would be the most responsible thing to do. Okay, so I sat down on the floor. Well, I sat down on the floor because I didn't want to necessarily bend over and be digging into my backpack. So I sat down at the floor because my room was literally at the end of the hallway. It was at the end of the hallway. So I sat down on the floor and began to dump all my things from my backpack. Okay? Literally. Out on the floor, sitting on the floor, going through my backpack, trying to be the responsible person and find this hotel key in Washington, D.C. at like 10 o'clock at night. Well, while I was sitting on the floor, I began to think, okay, maybe it's here. And I was finding my hotel key. And I can't remember because this is the next part that was an opportunity to practice boundaries with myself, an opportunity to recognize the fence that I had established for myself and my emotions, and being more aware of the regulations, the statutes, the how-tos for myself on what not to do. All right. So as I'm digging in my backpack, I'm getting there. As I get in my backpack, literally, I think I almost found it. I see coming down the hallway, it was about 5, 6, 7 grown men, like literally in less than 5 minutes after I was dumping out my backpack, walking to me like, is everything all right? Yes, everything is all right. Are you at the hotel? Do you stay at the hotel in here? Yes, this is my room. I'm trying to find my key. And they began to ask other questions, but because I was overstimulated by the number of people that was coming to me late at night in Washington, D.C., and they all worked for the hotel, but nevertheless, the fact that there were so many and asking, different questions, I was like, oh my goodness. And then I told them, yes, I'm just trying to find my hotel key. And in that moment, I felt, not that you feel stupid, but I for lack of a better way to describe it, I felt stupid. I felt defeated, even though my goal was to feel empowered by staying on top of it, by being responsible and not losing the hotel key. I did not feel as bad as I did when I lost the key to our home and made our family late that time. But I did feel really, really bad. And even I'm grateful for that moment. And I finally found my hotel key. I think it was once they left, and I was like, yes, I found it. But once I got back in my room, when I finally used my key, I'm not gonna lie, I cried. I cried because I felt extremely embarrassed. I cried because I felt a little belittled by their questions, like, why else would I be in the hallway? But I guess they were just trying to be safe with all that's going on in the world. But nevertheless, it wasn't traumatizing. It was just, I don't know. I'm not coming up with a word to describe it. But it did leave a lasting impact for me in the fact that this is what I appreciate. I had my moment. I cried. And it wasn't like the, 1 or 2 tears, like cry. Like, it was like you lost your dog type cry, like you lost your best friend type cry. It was one of those deep cries. And all I could do was cry into my pillow, like, okay. Because I was trying to process all that, because I really was feeling overstimulated by the thoughts, by the intrusive thoughts that were coming to my mind, like, Greer, you were trying to be responsible, you were trying to do this. And then after that, after the cry, after the regrouping, because something that I tell my students is to regroup, reflect, and recover. So I regrouped after I cried and did all of that. I began to reflect on, okay, Greer, moving forward, before you go back to the hotel room, if by chance you need to do this, because sometimes I have to physically go through a process, and it's kind of like a process to transition from one thing to the next. So moving forward, so that's to regroup, reflect. I begin to reflect. Okay, so Greer, you need to make sure that you are moving forward, putting your hotel key exactly in the same spot every time. And before you go into the hotel, now that you don't want anybody to come down and ask all these questions and you be overstimulated again by the numerous questions and the number of people, already know exactly again where your hotel key is, and if necessary, already before you go to the hotel, get it out, put it in your hand so that you can swipe. All right, so that's what I did. So that's how I recovered, and I'm grateful for that moment because I didn't ruminate and just keep rehearsing all those intrusive negative thoughts and go down that rabbit hole and then just beat myself up. No, I owned the moment. I owned responsibility for not following through with what works for me. So that was a boundary, even that I'm learning to establish for myself, that I am not in control of what others do. I can't tell hotel people, don't crowd me and have 5, 6. I mean, it was like 6. I don't know. That shows you it was more than one person. I know that was more than 3. But that's just the boundary that I've learned to establish for myself. And even learning to establish boundaries, telling others what, as I said before, what works for me and what doesn't. It works better for me to have a game plan on what I'm going to do and not always live sporadically. So here's something that I do. It's a boundary, and it also could be like habits, and maybe next time we'll talk about habits because I'm reading the book Atomic Habits. But one of the boundaries that I've also learned is being aware of what helps me to be more stable, if you will, emotionally, and not just... So, like, another boundary that I've established for myself is trying to, like I said, be aware of my emotions. That's the greatest one. And I think for me, what was most difficult or challenging part of this is that it's getting to the root of who I am, and how that many times I didn't establish boundaries for fear of not being accepted. I really think that's why this book has been more difficult to continue to listen to. I'm almost finished with my Atomic Habits book because that's like, ooh. But to really get to the core of why I don't establish boundaries, I think it really was because I didn't want others to not like me as much. But others around me, and here's the challenge with that for me, because here's a term that I've seen in the ADHD, men's group that I'm in for men with ADHD, but that's not the name. The name is actually Men's ADHD Support Group. But since I use people first language, I change it up. Rejection sensitivity disorder, or there was another one that someone posted. I think that's why it was more difficult, or why it is. I'll speak by faith. Why it was, as I am learning to embrace the truths of this book, because it has scriptures in it, things that I believe. I'm thankful for learning that those that really love me will continue to be my support system, and understand that having boundaries will not only benefit me, but it'll benefit them, because they will learn to establish boundaries, or they'll learn to, appreciate the boundaries in which they have established. Because here's what has happened to me in times past. In times past, I'm a little better now, but I would be frustrated by the fact that others had the ability, the capacity, the propensity to establish habits, and I would get jealous or upset that they were able to do it, but I did not empower myself. Boundaries really are empowering, because it allows others to know just how far they can go and how far they cannot go. And as I am learning to mature and evolve. I am grateful for establishing boundaries, and especially at this transition I am in right now. Like, this upcoming school year will be different, so I'm grateful that I did get the book when I did about boundaries, because those that listen to this and you are a believer, pray for a brother, because I am going back to school. But yes, I'm going back to school. So this past school year, our district, Madison County, is starting a cohort so you can get your master's in leadership, so that you can become a principal or whatever, assistant principal in leadership. And I am so grateful for a time such as this, to where it's a cohort, so it won't just be me isolated. It'll be me working with the group, and some of the people in the group. One person I know in the group, they're like me. They're a person with ADHD. So that is so empowering, because they understand how we think. She understands that we may lose things. So, like, literally the other week, it was actually last week, she was asking about a question about either whether classes are all going to be online. And that was great that she asked the question. And I then asked, okay, so what classes are we supposed to take? And she shared with me the PDF electronically, because for me, if I have a paper, I might lose the paper. But one thing that I probably most likely will keep up with is my phone. So if it's, even if it's something as simple as where they give the little card when you go to the doctor and they tell you your follow-up appointment, something like that, I'll take a picture of it. That way I can refer back to the picture, because the picture is saved on my phone and it's saved on Google Drive. So I have kind of a receipt, if you will. So back to the EKU cohort. I'm glad that it's with someone that has ADHD, so we can bounce ideas off of one another on what it might be like as being a leader with ADHD. Excuse me. Also, with it being a cohort, not only am I around other people, they will help hold me accountable for when things are due. And that's the other thing about boundaries that I'm learning, that with boundaries, if you will, understanding what's my responsibility and what is not. So since it is not my responsibility for me to modify things, or for me, I have taken the role to self-advocate for myself, if you will. So I filled out the paperwork for disability and submitted that to EKU, the school where I will be going, Eastern Kentucky University here in Richmond. And then they emailed me back a form that I'm supposed to send to my therapist. So this will be like, it's groundbreaking for me. It's a pivotal point in my life, and I am interested in seeing, I'm really thankful for what school will be like this time. School, prior to being diagnosed, prior to having therapy, I kind of avoided it because I didn't want to feel like I felt once before. So I'm really grateful for this whole process. I never would have imagined, I really would not have imagined growing as much as I have from last August until now. I've learned to verbalize my emotions in ways that I did not before. I've learned to be more aware of my why, like why I have to do things the way I do them. And I'm okay with that. And I wasn't like that before, like even to the point of making myself do tasks that I don't really want to do at the moment. I mean, I don't want to do it, but being aware of the fact that I don't want to do it, and then I do it, I'm like, Greer, hallelujah, you have grown. Like, here's the thing, like last night, we observed the 7-day Sabbath. So from the time the sun goes down on Friday until the time the sun goes down on Saturday, we strive to focus only on Yahweh or only on God, and we'll have Bible study, listen to music, And our conversations are centered around biblical things. So we don't clean. So after the Sabbath, there's dishes from where we ate, because that's when we have our largest meal, and my wife and children will cook. I came home after church yesterday, and the kitchen needed to be clean. And I didn't do it immediately, because immediately after we came in, sat downstairs and watched TV with my wife. And then I think I fell asleep, possibly. I can't remember. I think I did. Yes, I did. Actually, see, that's the thing. I went into the house and I told my son, okay, I forgot my ice cream in the car. Will you go get it, because I'm going to go to the bathroom? Can you believe this? I said I need to go to the bathroom. Here's the power of ADHD. It's a superpower. I went downstairs to greet my wife, who had stayed at home. Now, I told my son, okay, I'm getting out of the car quickly. I took my shoes off, because we don't wear shoes in the house. Please bring in my ice cream, because I left it in between the seats. I need to go to the bathroom. I go downstairs, greet my wife, start talking to my daughter, who's sitting on the couch. They're watching a comedy. It was different videos on YouTube of comedians who have ADHD and things they were saying, like, I understand what you're talking about. I'm watching this show, or the different videos, different clips. I fall asleep while watching it. And then after waking up, I watch some more. And then I'm reminded, Greer, you need to go to the bathroom. Now, what's that got to do with boundaries? Really nothing. But I kind of learned, like, you know what? Just go. Oh. So, yeah. And I'm okay with where I am with things like that. That happens. And I'm really grateful for just learning not to beat up on myself, if you will, and make myself feel less than because of some challenges. In some ways it can be a challenge, in other ways I'm grateful that it gives me insight on my why, like I said before. And I'm really thankful again for where I am at this point in my life, even though I would have liked to have known how much ADHD or having ADHD impacted my life. I'm grateful now to where I am empowered. Knowledge really is power, and I'm so grateful that from last August until now, I know why that I would do, things like last night and forget. Oh, that's how I was getting there. And after I woke up from my nap, see, I took my medicine, so now I remember the long loop on how to get there. I woke up, after, went to the bathroom eventually, and I said, you know what, Greer, the kitchen needs to be clean. I didn't want to. I walked by and I said, I'll do it tomorrow. But I forgot where I heard it or read it, or someone said if something can be done like in a minute or two, go ahead and do it. So I started off, I wiped off the counter because there was stuff still on them. Okay, so if you wiped off the counter, you can move some of the things off the counter. So I started cleaning off the counter, moving the cups where they needed to go. And then I looked at the dishwasher and I said, unload the dishwasher. So if you unload the dishwasher, you naturally can fill it up again. So I filled up the dishwasher. So I began to clean it. Then my wife, she came up and assisted me. But I am really grateful even for establishing those boundaries with myself and telling myself, okay, the fence is here. You can't relax yet. You can't chill yet. Chill after you've done what you're supposed to do. So even those boundaries for myself, and I put boundaries up. I'm trying to for bad habits. And when I see those bad habits trying to resurface, tell myself there's a fence there. No trespassing and going back to bad habits. So I know that was a long way to get around it, but yes, the book is called Boundaries. It's got the word boundaries in it, and I can find it. I don't have it in front of me, but I hope that this encourages you to establish boundaries. Boundaries really will help you be better. As a person, boundaries will help you have more authentic relationships with others because you know your role in the relationship and they know theirs. It was different doing it like this, just being out and about, but I am super grateful for everybody that has been supportive. Like some of my colleagues are like, Mr. Greer, when are you going to do another one? Or one of my brothers from another mother, shout out to Dr. Searles, was like, Greer, when are you going to do it? Won't you just do it while you're in the car or while you're walking? And I actually want to do one where I'm walking. That will be awesome. Now, I don't know how long that will be because once I get to walking, it's like, it just, because oftentimes here it is, when I'm on the phone, I walk. I tend to pace a lot, and that's okay. Boundary, I'm okay with being authentic with myself. All right. So hopefully, again, this was encouraging to you to establish boundaries, to accept that it's okay to say no. It's okay to say yes. It's okay. That was one more thing before I depart. I am so glad that I'm learning boundaries right now before school, and because I'll have to implement that, because with being in school and working full time, I'll have to learn to say no and not feel bad with my no, because I've never been in school for a master's degree, so I'm quite sure it'll be more work, more reading, and reading takes me time, because in order for me to comprehend, I have to read it, have to annotate. So I'm going to have to practice what I'm telling you that I'm learning. So thank you for your support. I really, really, really appreciate it all. I really do. Just the number of people. And it's not like I'm doing this because I want 400,000 people to be like, oh, Greer, that helped me out. It's therapeutic for me, and even the one or two people that I work with that I like, that I know in real life relationships, the fact that they have said that it meant something to them means a lot to me, that there really is purpose in my progress. There's purpose even in my pain. There's purpose in everything that I have experienced and will experience, and hopefully you'll keep being a part of this journey with me. So thank you for your time, and I really do appreciate each and every one of you that have been supportive. You've taken the time to listen. You could have listened to anybody else, but you took time to listen to me. Thank you. And you have a great, fantastic, wonderful day filled. I pray that your day is filled with intentional moments, that you take time to listen to the sound of the rain. It's raining here. I hope that you take time to just look at your loved ones and just smile and think, you know what? I appreciate this moment. That's a great thing to learn to do. All right. So I digress. Thank you so much. I love you all. I appreciate you. And I tell my students this, and I believe it even more as I get older. Nobody can do what you can do. And I really am glad that you are a part of my life story. As I share these thoughts with you, you are now a part of my story. And I am so grateful to see the pages unfolding before my eyes. You have a great day. Shalom.